With the holding of a G20 meet in Srinagar, India is making a big Kashmir statement to the global community at large and to China and Pakistan in particular. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. Extraordinary images coming from Srinagar this evening. A proud display, as it were, of India's soft power in the heart of a valley that has often occupied the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Rather predictably, China is among the countries that chose to boycott this conclave. Pakistan, of course, previously, when Bilawal Bhutto was in India, had lashed out at the very idea of holding a G20 meet in Srinagar, calling it, quote unquote, the arrogance of India. Others who have sat out include Egypt, and the Saudis in Turkey have not officially registered but have sent travel representatives to this tourism meet. This is the first such diplomatic conclave of its kind after the abrogation of Article 370. Remember, that abrogation is still being contested by several parties, political parties in India's Supreme Court, but almost nobody believes that that abrogation is going to ever be reversed. What is happening today in Srinagar is of huge geopolitical importance. There is signaling in it that needs to be deconstructed and understood. And that signaling, as I said, is primarily to the two countries with which India has had, in the last couple of years as well, issues at both the line of control and the line of actual control. Let's introduce our panel of experts today as we look at how to understand, how to locate, how to read what is happening in Srinagar today. Joining us on the program is veteran diplomat Ambassador Vivek Katju. Always a pleasure to have you back with us. Also joining us is military veteran Lieutenant General Satish Dua. General Dua has served as the General Officer Commanding of the 15th Corps right there in Srinagar. So this is his home turf, as it were, that he's seeing on his screen. Also joining us is Salman Soz. Salman Soz is, of course, a leader from the Congress from Kashmir. And let's see whether he shares, as an Indian, the enthusiasm of what is happening today, or whether he has his own feelings about it. And also joining us is military veteran and BJP leader Brigadier Anil Gupta. It's very good to see all of you. And before I start with the politics of this, I want to start with the diplomacy of it. What is the message we're sending the world? Ambassador Vivek Katju, I should mention, of course, that you're Kashmiri yourself, but that's not really the point. The point is, how do you actually see what's happening? There's a message here. What is that message?
Barkha, I must first clarify that I'm ancestrally a Kashmiri.
Yeah, by your name, I made an intelligent
Ha,
guess there.
ha,
Huh?
ha.
Gee.
So I've never been to Kashmir.
Ever?
I'm a, never. I'm an Allahabadi. I belong to Prayagraj now, and my ancestors left the valley 250 years ago. I
Gee.
have an affinity to the valley, but genetically I am a Kashmiri. But I thought I'll put that on the table
Sure.
straight.
Sure.
Now, I think the message we are sending to the world is this, that Kashmir is now the union territories of J&K and Ladakh are parts of India, and just as we are holding or hosting G20 events in other parts of India, we have the full right to host events in Jammu and Kashmir. I think this is a valid signal to send. That is point one. Point two, the constitutional changes that took place in J&K, the erstwhile state, are, as you correctly noted, a subject matter of a judicial uh, concern. They are before the Supreme Court, and at some stage, the Supreme Court will have to hear the matter. The next point is that the government, I think, is on record as saying that when the situation is appropriate, they have every intention of restoring the statehood of J&K. So that is the essential message that we are sending, that we have full right to host any G20 meeting in J&K, and it is good that the world, the G20 countries at large and the invited countries have accepted this
Yeah.
proposition. Indeed,
Yeah.
I think, except for Pakistan and perhaps China, no one protested really the changes that took place, because everyone accepted that these were within the domestic sphere of India, and it was for the Indian courts to decide, since there was a challenge about the methodology adopted. It was for the Indian courts to decide uh, the correctness of the manner in which the changes had been done. That issue still subsists. My last point is that I have been questioning in my mind whether that a meeting of the G20 should have been held in J&K is perfectly valid. I think a meeting should have been held. The
Hmm.
only question I have in mind is whether that meeting should have concerned tourism. Now, Kashmir is a tourist paradise. Its economy depends on tourism. For the
Hmm.
last couple of years, the tourism has increased by leaps and bounds in J&K.
So why are
Now,
you questioning it?
the question is that if a meeting has to be held on tourism with such enormous security, and that security is entirely justified,
Hmm.
then I think there is a contradiction between tourism and this extent of security, which is justified. Therefore, uh, the the thought which is persisting in my mind is whether we should have held some other meeting in JNK relating to G20. Now,
Hmm.
uh, on record, my former colleague, who's now the chief coordinator, has said uh, recently that if it was JNK, it was only natural to have it on
Yeah.
tourism, and that is a point of view. I respect that point of view, but the question in my mind still persists, because if I, as a tourist, want to go to a place, I want full freedom to move around.
Yeah.
And there is full freedom for everyone else, for the tourists to move around. Quite clearly, the people of J&K want tourism, but these delegates who are going, I think they will be under this enormous security cover, and therefore this contradiction.
But
And therefore, this big.
I'm glad you made the point about it being entirely justified, because thinking for a moment, General Dua, let me bring you in as a security sort of personnel, an RV commander, a police director general of police. This they'll be on tenterhooks. We've had militant threats already. This is in the shadow of militancy. You've got very important global representation in the valley, and whenever you host an event, I imagine, which involves world leaders or world representatives, Ambassador Katju coming into Kashmir, you will have to have this kind of security. I mean, I don't see, General Dua, how it could be avoided, but let me bring your thoughts in. And I think the point Ambassador Katju is making is then have it on some other theme, right? Not on tourism. But go ahead, General Dua.
Well, Barkha, I think um, I go with that view that if it was Kashmir, Srinagar, I think tourism is the apt topic to hold a conference on, because it is the tourist hub of our country. Things have improved over the last 3 years. And well, I'll come to the sort of points raised by Ambassador Katju. But I also feel that we are also, like you said, putting out a statement, signaling to the world that look, there is this is a state or a city over here, or all the whole of Kashmir. Uh, there are so many negative travel advisories, and we are wanting to show the international community that it is not as it is being stated. That means it is not a police state or a militarized zone where people can move freely. You see, the tourists can actually move around freely. I do agree with what Mr. Kaju said about the delegates having to remain constrained within the security parameters. That perhaps would happen in any city. Yes, it would happen more in Srinagar, but um, the point also is that so many livelihoods depend on tourism over here, whether it is the shikara wala, hotel wala, pony wala, sumo wala, the drivers, I mean cabs, hotel, everything depends on tourism. And then there is the Kashmiris, Kashmir has an opportunity to showcase to the world their culture, their tourism, their handicraft. So all in all, I think it is a good step to bring in tourism. Security concerns have been taken care of. And like you said, it is also signaling. And I'll end by saying this. When I say signaling, a couple of days ago, when G7 was held in Hiroshima, I mean, it was a statement. You held it in Hiroshima for a reason. You had the American president and all the other leaders there. So that was a statement. Similarly, I think our government is also astutely making a statement about Srinagar. A couple of objections, very expectedly so, notwithstanding.
Yeah, I have to agree with the last point that you make, that I actually see what's happening as entirely through the lens of geopolitics. I definitely think that more than this being about tourism or even the G20,
Yes.
it is an underpinning of assertion, even in terms of infrastructure projects, for example, the images that have been released about the Chenab rail bridge and so on. This is something that I think India is saying almost more to the Chinese, perhaps, than India is saying to the Pakistanis. That is my own reading. I just want to bring in now some political perspective. Of course, Brigadier Gupta, you're also a military veteran. I'm sure you speak as a Fauji, but you're also a BJP leader. Go ahead with your thoughts today.
Barkha, good evening. First of all, let me say that today is the proudest moment for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Srinagar today is signs of all eyes the world over. Some are enjoying and seeing its beauty, some are envying it, and those who have missed it must be repenting as to why they missed it. Today, my predecessors have talked out, we have also mentioned about the signaling, the strategic messaging. There is no doubt the venue has been chosen for strategic messaging. But apart from that, as everybody agrees that the economy of this union territory depends on tourism. And ever since August 2019, domestic tourism has picked so much that in the winters this time we have to send people back. There are no rooms available in the valley. Summer, for the next 2 months, the hotel rooms are booked. The footfall of tourists, the domestic tourists, is increased multiply. But what is lacking is the international tourist. And I think this event is the one, the intention of this event is to let the world know, let these delegates know that Jammu and Kashmir is now ripe for accepting international tourists. As far as security is concerned, as Dua said, I agree with him. Had it been anywhere, the security had to be there. Particularly here, it's more because there is an evident threat. Pakistan has been threatening that not allow the G20 meet to be held here. That's a reason. Pakistan has a justified reason. They are worried that their narrative no more will be now valid. Hence, this security or excess of security, I think, is required and was to be there and will be there. But as far as tourists are concerned, you see, domestic tourists are moving everywhere freely. There's no hindrance on anybody. You see Gulmarg, you see Pahalgam, you see Tangmarg, Usmarg, name any station, it's now full of tourists. So therefore, I feel the purpose of this, it will be achieved immediately after this, when I anticipate the number of member countries will lift the travel advisories.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, that we haven't thought about the international tourists, the domestic tourists, of course, flooding the valley. Salman, I want to bring your perspective in. I'm quite aware that it's not identical to that of Brigadier Gupta, maybe not even that of Ambassador Katju and General Dua. Do go ahead. I understand that as an opposition Kashmiri politician, you have misgivings of maybe about the abrogation itself, but I'm sure as a realist, you also know that parts of your own party, several of your own party colleagues supported that abrogation. Today, speaking as an Indian, do you at least acknowledge that what's happening is a huge moment, a huge statement?
Thanks, Barkha, for having me. Uh, I'm not in Kashmir right now, but of course I'm in touch with family and friends So, I actually differ somewhat. I have a contrarian view here. The notion that somehow today India is announcing to the world that Kashmir is part of India, I think that is, to my mind, a
So
kind of a
Salman, I'm going
defensive.
to ask you to just reconnect because your audio is terrible. I can barely hear you. If you're wearing AirPods, just remove them. Let me actually, in the meantime, while Salman reconnects to us, bring up a question for Ambassador Katju that we had on our screen from one of our members. This is talking, of course, about those who are missing this conclave. For Ambassador Katju, does China's objection relate to Kashmir in support of Pakistan, or is it a larger point, and are they trying to make a comment about Ladakh? Is there objection to Ladakh, which is where, of course, a standoff is happening between the Indian and the Chinese, or is this actually siding with Pakistan? Go ahead, Ambassador Kaju.
I think it is both. Uh, if you recollect, the Chinese had taken great objection to the statements made in Parliament in August of 2019 relating to Aksai Chin, and they were completely unjustified in their objections. Also, it is in support of Pakistan. But I think I need to underline the point that I've been making. Uh, let and Barkha, please allow me a minute on this because this is
Sure.
important. I don't want to be misunderstood. I feel that we should have held a meeting on in the G20 context in JNK. I also feel that there is a viewpoint which can be advanced, as my co-panelists have advanced, on holding that meeting on tourism. Kashmir is, of course, a tourist paradise, and there is enormous domestic tourism taking place.
Hmm.
Now, I think it was Brigadier Gupta who said whether international advisories would be lifted.
Yeah.
I put it to Brigadier Gupta that if this was the security cover that was provided, and he was part of a delegation of G20 officials coming for this, would he go back and suggest to his people that things were entirely normal and that the advisory should be lifted? One last point. If security, of course, would be provided, but there are other tourist destinations in India. Goa is one where security would be provided to any G20 meeting that is being held. But would that be of the same order as this, or whether delegates who come for
Hmm.
that meeting would be allowed to go in the evening freely to the pubs and the restaurants of Goa?
But
So
but
that is
but
the point I'm trying to make.
but so all you're stressing is you agree with everything else, but you wish that the thematic was not tourism, but some other meat.
I have no. Here again, see the logic of what they are saying, but the question in my mind still persists whether the
Okay,
advisory would be lifted, whether the objective that
sure,
Dr. Brigadier
sure.
Gupta has in mind would
Fair,
be lifted, because
fair.
the person who's going there will have to report that I was provided this
But
security cover.
but I think the world is also arriving in Srinagar knowing the knowing what they're coming into.
Of
It's
course, but of
and
course.
yes. I just want to give Salman a chance to make his point before Brigadier Gupta responds to you. Salman, very much hoping we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Barkha.
Yes.
I was saying that I have a contrarian view because the notion that somehow today India is announcing to the world that Kashmir is ours, I think this is very strange. Kashmir has always been part of India, and just by having this event, frankly, there's a lot of stage managing going on right now, and I think the Prime Minister and his government excel at stage management. But the fact of the matter is that the message that you're sending right now is that yes, you come here and you'll see a lot of security. Schools are closed, right? Your schools are closed, stores are closed in a lot of places. You cannot actually take your vehicle out easily. That's what you're telling the local population. and you're telling the world that come and see, this is this is a tourist haven, so to speak. But it is not as if tourism started in 2019. Mind you, tourism has been going on in Kashmir for a long, long time, even in the difficult days of the 2000s, for example. We had tourism. Domestic tourists were always welcome and always coming. Now, let me ask you, we could have elections in J&K, and it could be a state in 1999, in 2002, in 2008, and 2014, but somehow magically in 2023, J&K cannot be a state, cannot, has to be called a union territory? Suddenly. So why? What is so different about 2023? In some ways, we have regressed. This is not to my mind a place where you have a lot of love. Okay, there's not a lot of love right now, and that is how you actually win. You don't win by military domination in some ways. That narrative of dominate the population and then we'll figure it out, that is not, in my view, the right way to go. And by the way, this whole 2019 and suddenly now J&K really is an integral part. Mind you, it is my view, and I say it, I've written about this as well. Article 370 and the federal character of that article, that is India's future. India's future is decentralization. India's future is not centralization. Article 370 is the way for everybody. The reason you see a lot of problems right now, for example, in the Northeast, is because power is centralized. People
Okay, let me jump in. Let me jump in
to express themselves. So that is what is. I think this. I personally think that there's a lot of stage management. I know, for example, Katju Saab. I can see that he's a little. He has something in his mind, but he's a veteran diplomat. He knows it, and everybody else around here knows it. That it's not as if diplomats from foreign countries don't know what the real situation is. But the real people.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm sure Brigadier Gupta will respond. But briefly, I would say, are you mixing up two things here? And may I put to you that there could be two views on 370, on Jammu and Kashmir's sort of special status that no longer exists after the abrogation, the judicial process of review. That's one set of arguments, right? The other set of arguments is, even if today were a Manmohan Singh government, your party's government, and a G-20 meet were happening in Srinagar, as Indians, we would all stand and say, A, we recognize that there is terrorism pushed into the valley from across the border. So we recognize that every time we have an international meet here, the security will be, by definition, and I remember this for every event that ever took place in the Congress years as well, it has to be of a greater order than it can be or would be anywhere else. Are you mixing up two issues here?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Not at all. In fact, I think, Barkha, have we forgotten, Barkha, that in 2011, you had one of the widest participation in a Panchayati Raj election in J&K's history? Have we forgotten that things were actually looking pretty good? And you could have the same event with much less security. I refuse to believe that 2011's J&K is somehow today's J&K somehow become more dangerous. If it has become more dangerous, it is because of the policies of the government. Why is it? I ask you, why is it that in 2011?
I don't think anyone is agreeing to the fact that it is more dangerous. I think the security is as a consequence of the fact that you have 60.
Barkha, in 2011, why were people participating with so much openness?
Let the others respond. You made a passionate point. Ambassador Katju, Brigadier Gupta, and General Dua in that order. Ambassador Katju, go ahead.
Look, the problems in J&K on the security front emanate largely from across the border, from across the LOC.
Yeah.
This is undeniable. And I'm sure that whatever may be the anger in Kashmir and angst, and there is something that we must recognize, that there are sections of public opinion in J&K which feel alienated. They shouldn't, but they do. These are emotional things. But the violence for the last 30 years has been very, very largely propelled from across the border, from Pakistan. Now, the problem is that Pakistan has achieved such intrusive capabilities in J&K that and Salman, Mr. Soos will forgive me for saying this, that many mainstream politicians in J&K are aware of that intrusiveness. And that evokes a fear, because Pakistan is not refrained from using violence against some of the most revered figures in J&K, in Kashmir, if it suits its purpose. We know that.
They've also
And he
used
knows
violence
that.
against separatists who have been in dialogue with Delhi.
Absolutely.
Abdul Ghani Lone being a prime example, who was assassinated. Yeah.
So that is why I'm saying that the security cover that is given is perfectly valid. I think I need to reiterate this time and again that the security cover is valid and would have had to be given for any meeting held in J&K, and especially now, because of the constitutional changes. Now, they are within the domestic sphere of India, and Mr. Soos and others on the panel and Mr. Soos's party and others can have differences of opinion on the methodology used, and that is a matter which the courts will eventually decide. These matters have been pending before the Supreme Court, and it has to take a view at some stage or the other. In my view, the sooner it takes a view, the better. But that is for the court to decide. So the only small point I have is this, that given the security cover needed, what should have been the theme of the meeting? If people feel that tourism is fine and that international advisories will be diluted, I will be very happy to be proved wrong.
Let's take
I
that to
would be
Brigadier
delighted
Gupta,
to be proved wrong.
who believes that will be a consequence. Brigadier Gupta, Salman, I will come back to you later. I know you'll want to respond. Brigadier Gupta, you said this is for the international tourists. They'll come, they'll see. But the international diplomats, sir, with respect, just like I say to Salman, that the security, and I agree completely with what Ambassador Katju said, that the militancy, the terrorism that we've seen is from across the border, and therefore the security cover in Kashmir will not be like it is in Goa. There's no question. We'll be naive if we think that. But equally, are you being quite romantic in thinking that suddenly, international advisories are going to be lifted, and like the Westerners are going to be encouraged to go with their families to Kashmir? I don't think that's going to happen either, because they recognize where Kashmir is in the security matrix.
Barkha, I am being practical. Now, I'll tell Ambassador Katju, where he asked me if I would, keeping hand on my heart, I say if I were a delegate, I would say yes. And the reason for that, the answer he has given. I would explain to my country why this security situation was such. He said so, because it was the threat from across the border and the involvement of Pakistan in worsening the atmosphere inside Kashmir. I think that is where I stand. And I still maintain that it may not be, we cannot say that it will be like domestic tourists, but gradually there will be a change and international tourists will start coming in. Maybe in bits may increase, but international tourism will see a upward trend in Kashmir, I am very sure. Second point made by Salman regarding the Panchayat elections. In 2020, this government held Panchayat election, 3-tier Panchayat election in Jammu and Kashmir, and the participation at some places was 96%. So it's not that. The next, he talked of the future of India is going to be federalism. I take him back to the pre-partition days when the Constituent Assembly was sitting and discussion was going on and what should be. It's there in the records of the Constituent Assembly. What structure India should follow. In fact, one of the points of difference between Jinnah and the Congress was this only. Jinnah wanted federal structure. Nehru wanted a central power, central authority. That was the main difference between Jinnah and Nehru. But in the Constituent Assembly also this issue was debated at length. And it was Pandit Nehru who said that we are not ripe enough for federalism. Then why was this special treatment given only to one state by creating a state within a state? Yes, it was justified by saying it's temporary provision. So let's accept it. It was temporary. It was to go some time. It has gone. So I don't think there is a, any more discussion on this, except like you all have said, it's sub judice. Let the Supreme Court say what it has to
Yeah.
say. Now, coming on to winning hearts and minds. See, everywhere people are not unhappy. There are sections which are unhappy. Sections which are unhappy are those who had benefited immensely from 370, from the regime of 370, which make it a restrictive regime with no challenge to corruption, no anti-corruption bureau, which thrived on being a state within a state. But ask a common man, ask a shikara wala, ask a pony wala, ask a taxi wala, ask the hoteliers, ask all these people, are they happy or not? They are very happy.
But can we for a moment step back from the domestic politics? And that's where I will again say to Salman, are we mixing up two issues? I just want to bring in General Dua on one point. If you were looking after the security today, so much conversation about security and therefore how much has changed, how much has not changed, what would be upmost on your mind? I mean, you're tasked with, keeping 60 delegates from all over the world safe. What would be your main concern today, General Dua?
Look, before I answer that, on the security front itself, let me tell you that why do we all say that things have improved drastically, or there's been much improvement over the last 3 years after abrogation or dilution of Article 370? When I was the Corps Commander, it was 2015 and 16. We all know what happened during those years. Schools were closed, markets were mostly closed. Hurriyat issued a calendar. There was violence on the streets. Stone pelting was common. I mean, so when a tourist went there, he or she wasn't sure that they would be able to go and visit the places they wanted to visit. It has happened several times. I myself, as Corps Commander, have had to help a group of tourists or families to stay safe and return without actually doing much tourism. So that is one aspect of security. Today, everything is open. Whenever schools, markets, there are no bans, there is no stone pelting, there are no protests or hartals. If there is some violence has been brought under control. There is some violence, but it is not in the touristy places. It happens in jungles of Rajbad, it happens in Kupwara, it happens outside, except for a few targeted killings in Srinagar town, which is a hybrid terrorist. I won't expand the discussion to that. That's a very different ballgame that's happening. Immigrant labor or Kashmiri Pandit or something like that is targeted killing. To your question about what would be what I would like to do if I'm in charge of security, look, what we have to do is we have to, like I said earlier, a secure environment for delegates has to be provided in any place, even if it was in Goa, like Mr. Katju mentioned. Security cover would have to be provided, but considering that this place has a history of violence, and mostly, as Mr. Katju himself brought out, and we all know that though, that it is cross-border terrorism, and more telling is the fact that there are threats. Haven't we seen, I think yesterday or day before, the TRF has issued out a threat that we are going to stall it. So if the state, the government, the nation is making a statement that we will make sure, you can issue any threats that you want, we will make sure that this conference or this meeting does run its course without any such security, without violence, we'll make sure. So to that extent, obviously, we have to have more security laid out for these delegates than for a normal tourist.
I think the delegates
just give me
understand
15
that.
seconds. Just give me 15 seconds. I'll make a personal point. I retired 4 years ago. I used to move with best of security. As a Corps Commander, you have to move there with security. I have been to Srinagar and a bit of Kashmir 5 times after I have retired. And now I move without security. I once tweeted saying it is liberating to be stopping at a red light on a traffic signal. What I'm trying to say is that when you are there as a delegate, as a known personality, something, your security has to be provided. But as a common tourist, so you don't require security. And there, I also said, just like Brigadier Gupta said, I said it would negate the travel advisories. You may not go and issue out, but you will put out a word, like Brigadier Gupta said, when you go back to your countries, that this is not as is the perception in our minds, and people will start coming.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a beginning. It will take a while for foreign tourists to start thronging.
Yeah, let me bring in Salman, and then we have to start taking last comments. Salman, let's say this was not a BJP government and this was a government in the center led by your party. It is not that the police would feel any differently under your party. They would be bundle of nerves. Anything goes wrong, they're going to be blamed. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Is it your point that holding the G20 meet in Srinagar is the problem? Also, may I remind you of what Mr. Bhutto, Bilawal Bhutto, said when he was in Goa at the SCO forum, literally threatening India on Indian soil, saying "Waqt aane par yaad dila denge, jawab de denge," and so on. Uh, you know, your I want to understand more clearly your misgivings today.
Barkha, this whole debate has been dominated by the security question. Frankly, I'm not that concerned about it. I'm not an expert on security. I am a Kashmiri and I am an expert on Kashmir. And as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing to me and to the people of Kashmir is how they are treated with dignity, how they have real peace, how there's not somebody telling them these people are happy. Like Mr. Gupta seems to think Shikarawala is happy, Salman Soz is happy, everybody's happy. Please don't tell me what my life is about. I'm not telling you what your life is about. So don't stop putting your thoughts into my mind. I have my own mind, and I can tell you that till the people of Kashmir are treated with respect and dignity properly, the way it is supposed to be, what you see is this calm, but under the calm there's a storm. Under the surface there's a storm. There's a storm brewing, and I think the only way to deal with such things, when you deal with people, is through humanity. Unless we talk like that, nothing's going to change. We can have all sorts of discussions about what the positioning is, what the geopolitics is, what the security situation is, but we will not get to the real stuff. What is the real stuff? That we have people who want to be treated with respect, who want to be given back their dignity, who cannot be disenfranchised, who cannot be disempowered. And by the way, that is not just about the people of Kashmir, that is for the entire country. And that is the way you have to treat people. That is when I talk about federal system.
Can I ask you though? Ambassador Katju did recognize that there is a domestic political debate around what the best policy is ongoing. If the matter is before the Supreme Court, all of that is taken. Why does it have something to do for you with the G20? Like for me, I think you can have two parallel conversations. The G20 is India saying something to the rest of the world. It's not India saying something negative to its own people.
Barkha, I'll give you an example. I'll give you why this rankles sometimes. The other day I was on Twitter and I saw some trend on Global Kashmir, and it had the same message written in poor English about how Kashmir, J&K, had become a net exporter of agricultural products. And I thought it was very surprising. I thought it was very pleasant in some ways that J&K has suddenly become a net exporter of agricultural products by linking it to global value chains. And I am an economist. I know a little bit about this stuff. I put out a Facebook post saying that if this is true, in such a short span of time that J&K has become an agricultural kind of exporter, then we should spread this message across the country, because if J&K can do it, everybody else can do it. This is, to my mind, President Trump's visit to Ahmedabad.
Are you being negative?
When President Trump came and they put all these slums behind curtains of some sort.
This is not the same thing. Okay, let me get Brigadier Gupta to respond. Brigadier Gupta, I need to start taking last comments. I'll start with you, then General Dua, and then Ambassador Katju gets the last word. Yes.
Okay, Barkha, I must tell you that I'm not speaking off the cuff. I visit Srinagar and Kashmir for 7 days in every month. I am now with the Jammu and Kashmir Cricket Association. I have conducted cricket talent hunts in the farthest corners of Kashmir. I have met people. I meet people across the board, and I get to know the pulse of the people. I'm not speaking from my room or for sitting on my chair. So I'm telling Mr. Soz, please accept what I'm saying. It's what I'm saying is the pulse of the people. I'm speaking their heart out. I'm not telling you what you may be, but I'm just speaking on behalf of those people I've met. I'm sincerely speaking on their behalf. And as far as you're talking of GDP, from 8% in 2008 to 14% in 2023. Isn't it better? It is. Certainly, Jammu and Kashmir is changing. There is a change. So, therefore, let's accept it. And lastly, I would say that this G20 meet, Y20 has been held in Ladakh. I think somebody mentioned why it should not be held in Leh. It has been held in Leh, Y20 meet. And this is the third meeting of the tourism. Two places other than this already has been held in
Yeah.
India.
Okay. General Dua, if you had to say one thing that has changed, Salman says that, there is a certain element of dressing up going on here. You would say what?
Well, I would say, let me also give a small claimer. I mean, not disclaimer, give me a claimer that I am from Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry. All my soldiers in my regiment are from Jammu and Kashmir only. So, and majority is Kashmiris. So you have to understand that. Now, majority are Muslims. Sorry. So now, the the impression that I gather is, in the last 3 years, there has been a lot of there are different indices have improved, development, better administration, panchayat elections, all that has happened that we know. I'm not going to repeat that. I am not saying the alienation is not there. All I'm saying that alienation is there, and for alienation to go, it will take a while. I mean, something that has gone wrong for more than 3 decades cannot change overnight. That will take time. It may take a generation or two. But the fact is also as to how many people have started benefiting from the new schemes, from the infrastructure, from the new business opportunities, from the new environment that has been created in every field, from the investments that are pouring in. I think to that extent, what Brigadier Gupta was bringing out earlier, all those whose rosy roti daily livelihoods depend on tourism certainly are going to benefit, have been benefiting in the last 3 years. And this is a good statement that is being put out for the foreign tourist more than the domestic audience.
Yeah, I think that last sentence is the operative point, Ambassador Kaju. And let me give you the last word. There can be many different opinions on, restoration of statehood for Jammu and Kashmir, when elections will be held, all of those conversations, what the Supreme Court will decide. But I think today is about signaling something to the world outside, in particular to China and Pakistan. Salman seems to be implying, and I don't mean to speak for him, is that you can't say something to the outside world without speaking inside, and you've got to do both together. I'll give you the last word.
No, I think there's a distinction here. The distinction is that our anything which is within our internal sphere has to be resolved in the internal sphere. The outside world has no place. Neither Pakistan nor China have anything to do with center state relations, center UT relations.
Yeah.
Uh, that is for us to resolve. And if Salman and people like him from the Kashmir Valley have a certain feeling, I think that those feelings need to be addressed. And I'm confident that the government is alive to the need of addressing these feelings. That is point one. Point two, for some strange reason, which I've not never been able to divine, the Pakistanis, who were no great admirers of Article 370, suddenly started saying after 2019 that the changes that were made were actually uh, going back on commitments, bilateral and multilateral, that India had given. That wasn't simply true. For the Pakistanis, the right approach should have been that this is an internal matter of India. For us, the Kashmir issue status has remained unchanged and move along. But they haven't done so. They've remained fixed. And Bilawal's intemperate comments have only underlined that morass that they've got themselves into and they can't get out of it. So I think this particular meeting has been of surpassing significance. and I'm using these words deliberately, of surpassing significance to show to the international community that, look, this is an internal matter of India, and the international community has endorsed this. It had endorsed this also in 2019, when, despite the best efforts of Pakistan in China, the UNSC took a
Yeah.
hands-off approach and said that this is a bilateral matter at best, and it's for India and Pakistan to decide. We are not going to get into it.
Yeah.
Right. My last point. I would be delighted to be proved wrong. I underline this. I would be very happy to be proved wrong, and Brigadier Gupta and the general to be proved right, that this leads to an increase in international tourism. But my experience as a diplomat shows that if there is enhanced security, and I report that as I must to my home country, then people say that if there is an advisory, let it remain for some time.
Well, I
That has
think
been my experience. But again, I repeat, I would be very happy that General Dua and Brigadier Saab are right and I am wrong.
I will have to leave it here, but with just a thought that with Pakistan having taken the position that it will not engage with India till the abrogation is reversed, has Pakistan also pushed itself into a corner from which, even if India were willing to engage, which is not the case right now, how would that possibly happen? That's just a sort of international policy question, leaving it out there. Thank you very much, Salman, Brigadier Gupta, to General Dua and Ambassador Katju. No matter which side of this debate you're on, the fact is that this is a big moment unfolding in Srinagar today, and we must hope that it passes without any untoward incident. Its implications will continue to be discussed and debated, as they must in a free society, and we will continue to track it very carefully. My colleague Zafar Iqbal is on the ground. You can tune in at 8 p.m. to watch his special program. See you then, and thank you for watching. We started Mojo right here in this basement. Just 4 people, 4. And now we're about to hit our first 1 million subscribers. So this is to say thank you to all of you for your support, for your respect, and for your encouragement. We've always gone to where the story is. During the pandemic, when television's big anchors were hunkered down in their studios or at their homes, we hit the road. We traveled from Delhi to Kerala, covering 30,000 kilometers in a small car, reporting from inside ICUs and inside slum tenements. Whether it's flash floods or war zones, we've always put our boots on the ground. In fact, we're just back from Punjab, tailing the Khalistani fugitive Amritpal Singh. And through all of this, we have always put you, the people, first. In an age of partisan polarized media where most journalists are either chamcha ya morcha, we believe the story is sacred and the truth of the story is what matters. And now, as we get ready for the next step, we need your help. Become a Mojo member and get first access to all our big interviews. Get a chance to ask our newsmakers questions. Get a chance to write and report for us for both our website and our channels. And also, interact with me and my colleagues directly through AMA sessions. Literally, ask me anything. Click on the join now right next to the subscribe button, and yes, also subscribe if you haven't yet, and become a Mojo member for just 159 rupees a month. Hope to see lots of you in our community. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.